Mangroves are a crucial ecosystem on our Earth. They occur along the coastline in the tropical and subtropical regions. They are very well adapted to extreme environmental conditions, such as high salinity, anoxic soil, and tidal changes. The high salinity led to a range of mechanisms to deal with osmotic stress. Some species prevent the salt uptake by using compatible solutes. Others are able to take up the salt and either allocate it or excrete it via special glands on their leaves. The mangroves are also adapted to the waterlogged and anoxic soil they live on. They've developed specialized roots which can take up oxygen from the atmosphere and transport it through the parenchyma down to the roots. In addition, these roots give structure to the loose soil. Mangrove forests provide a variety of essential ecosystem services, beneficial for both the environment and humans. The unique root structure of the mangroves captures soil particles and decreases the water currents, which leads to sedimentation. The laying down of peat stabilizes the trees, and the mangroves act as a mechanical barrier against extreme weather events like storms and waves. Protecting coastlines is crucial, especially since almost 44% of the global population lives in coastal areas. They also help to counteract the eutrophication of the oceans by acting as a nutrient buffer zone. They capture nutrients and pollutants coming from the river waters and thereby filtering the water and enhancing its quality before it streams down into the ocean. As a result, phosphorus and nitrate concentrations decrease and eutrophication is prevented. Mangroves serve as habitats for a variety of species by providing food and shelter. Due to higher turbidity, predation pressure is low, and this makes them magnificent homes for juveniles and sometimes adult populations of economically important species of fish, prawn, and crabs. In fact, approximately 80% of the fish catches worldwide are directly or indirectly dependent on mangroves. The most important and currently investigated ecosystem service is the capacity of mangroves to store huge amounts of carbon. They play an essential role in counterbalancing greenhouse gas emissions. As every plant, they take up carbon, but they can sequester it in much higher rates than other ecosystems. Carbon is stored in their biomass, but especially in the peat, which is produced by sedimentation and dead plant material. In contrast to other forest types, such as boreal or temperate, they are able to store more than twice as much, even though they only make up 0.5% of all tropical forest area. Unfortunately, mangroves are under threat and are globally declining. Already, up to 50% of all mangrove forest is lost since the 1940s. The most impacted areas are the Indo-Pacific and the Caribbean regions, which even lost 30% and 24% within the last quarter century. And it is still an ongoing process with an annual rate of approximately 1% loss. It has been estimated that this will result in a functional loss of all mangroves in as little as 100 years unless stopped. The main threats to mangroves are of anthropogenic origin, such as deforestation. In an estuarine environment, where mangroves occur, there are different reasons for the increasing deforestation. Urbanization and industrialization caused heavily populated coastal zones, which impels widespread clearing of mangroves in these areas. Especially agriculture and aquaculture are important drivers. 38% of global mangrove loss is due to shrimp farming alone. The intensive use of fertilizers leads to eutrophication of the surrounding areas, which is a major threat to mangroves since they are well adapted to low nutrient conditions. The various consequences are not yet fully understood, but it is known that eutrophication can lead to competition with species adapted to higher nutrient levels. Also, it can increase the decomposition in the soil by stimulating microbial growth. Eventually, this leads to loss of soil structure and in turn to a loss of the important ecosystem services that mangroves provide, such as coastal protection. Another consequence is that mangroves capture larger amounts of nutrients and increase their growth, but invest more in the shoot growth than in the roots. This makes them more vulnerable for extreme weather conditions such as drought, because they can no longer cope with the special environmental conditions like high salinity. This leads to increased tree mortality. Remember, mangroves have a strong capability as a carbon sink and as a counterbalance for greenhouse gas emissions. If the ecosystem collapses, they stop storing carbon and shift from a carbon sink to a source. The decomposition in the soils will lead to a release of the stored carbon in the form of greenhouse gas and dissolved carbon. To enable mangroves to act as a carbon sink and provide all other valuable ecosystem services, further mangrove loss must be prevented and impacted forests must be restored. This is crucial for both other ecosystems and humans, which makes the conservation and restoration of mangroves of utmost importance.